We can never get to a place where we can be forcibly injected by our government, or we are no longer free. We have the same rights as farm animals, and I mean that.
Yeah.
Every American, no matter what you believe about the vaccine program, should believe that you should always have a choice.
Yeah.
If we lose the right to choose, then we lose this dream, and anything is possible. Why is it that not a single regulatory agency anywhere in the world, not a single government, not the best governments, even America, not a major medical institution like Kaiser Permanente, or until this moment, Henry Ford Health just did it. But why have none of them ever been able to do a study that compares the vaccinated to the unvaccinated and show us that the vaccinated are actually healthier? Wasn't that the whole point of this program? Ultimately, we should want evidence. This is all I want. What I want is people to be skeptical enough to stop taking experts' opinions on things. Well, the experts say that Robert Kennedy Jr. is wrong. They have done placebo-based trials. That's not an answer any longer. You're too smart for that. We're too smart for that. We did this during COVID. We need to say, where's the evidence that this is going to stop transmission? Because you lied. You said it was 95% effective. It was 0% effective.
Yeah,
everybody
that's
that
right.
got the vaccine got sick. Okay? So we know they lie. So experts shouldn't matter. Tony Fauci was an expert. That shouldn't matter anymore. What we want is on the front page of the New York Times every placebo-based trial that's ever been done on a childhood vaccine. They'll never print it because they don't exist. It's never been done. They're not safety testing these products. And then that should bother people. Western medicine or allopathic medicine really is military medicine. It's triage. It's designed to get you back onto the field. You know, strap your leg back in, you know what I mean?
That's right,
Put
yeah.
you back together and put you back on the field. Get you up and running again. It's great at that. But when it comes to making us healthy or maintaining health, pharma is the worst there is. We weren't born drug deficient.
That's right.
You know, like
Yeah,
we just simply weren't. And we have a system that is taking control of all health that never actually studies health.
Today, we're going to be talking about something that impacts every single one of us, your health freedoms. And we've been lied to so much over the years. And today I wanted to bring in one of the world's leading experts, somebody who has been very outspoken about our health freedom with everything from vaccines to things that happened during the COVID lockdown and so much more. I have Del Bigtree with us today. He is the host of the Highwire daily news show and podcast. He has created several documentaries exposing the truth about medical freedoms, COVID-19, and so much more. And so today we're going to be uncovering the truth, talking about everything from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the MAHA movement, and your medical freedom. Del, welcome to the show.
Josh, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, you know, I've been a big fan of yours for many years. You've done such a great job of putting out a lot of really well-known documentaries, and you're this person that's really saying, I want to expose the truth of what's going on. And this is important because the truth sets us free.
Yeah.
And we've been lied to continuously by the government, by the CDC, by the World Health Organization, by the American Medical Association, a lot of these prominent doctors. And one of my first questions to you is, you know, what caused you to say, I want to go and be the person that's going to go and get to the bottom of the truth and help uncover these things for the American people?
You know, I always think how far back to go into the answer to that question. But I would say one of the things that puts me where I am is how I was raised. You know, I had very conscious parents. And I like talking about it because I think it's one of the most important things we do is how we raise our kids.
Yeah.
And so my parents raised me first and foremost to always question authority, and raised me with a strong spiritual belief that I had a direct connection with God and that I should be guided by that connection over all other things. And so they would say to me, there's no teacher that overrides your own intuition. There's no politician. You should always be true to yourself. And, you know, and then they, you know, gave me, you know, disciplines in prayer and meditation and diet. You know, we were very conscious of diet. And, you know, I say that that's important because I think I was skeptical. I was taught to be skeptical from the very beginning. My parents told me, Governments lie, people lie, teachers aren't perfect. Be aware of that as you move forward. So everything I've ever done in my life, was about asking. I think I have a massive curiosity. I don't know if it comes from how I was raised, but certainly getting homeschooled and learning how to self-teach and things like that. A lot of that's a part of who I am. So when I ended up working on the medical talk show, The Doctors, which is where I really, I won an Emmy Award. That's where my television career took off as a producer. There was like 7 producers on the show. And if you think about it, you're sort of filling a whole week of episodes, and I would cover one whole episode. So every commercial break, everything you're watching, every guest, I had to find them, tell the story, all of that, put it all together. But I was always, the lawyers for the show would rib me at the Christmas party and say, you cost us more money than every other producer on the show. I was like, well, why is that? They're like,
I believe it.
Because you're always challenging the system. You're always challenging industry. You're challenging brands. And so I was always interested in stories where if a drug was recalled, I want to know why. And I want to know why it took so long to, how did we figure out you'd been lying? What was the discovery that happened in a court case? And so I sort of up-leveled what a daytime talk show like The Doctors was supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be like, here's how you put on your makeup. Take vitamin A on it, you know what I mean? But I was doing deeper dives into things because it's what fascinated me. And wherever there's $1 billion to be made, I'm always skeptical that those companies are looking out for our best interests.
Yeah. I went on Dr. Oz. I was a regular on there. I went on probably 7 or 8 times, and I loved that show. And I remember watching The Doctors too, because those were sort of the competing.
They're competing
shows at the time. And I'll tell you, my favorite episode of The Doctors was, I remember I was in Florida, and all of a sudden it came on the screen. I'm like, oh, I want to watch this. And Jenny McCarthy was on. Yeah. And I'm sure it was probably one of the most controversial, if not the most controversial episode of The Doctors ever. But I remember sitting there watching that, and I remember Travis Stork getting so offended and flustered during that episode, because you saw they really pushed his buttons when they're just saying, hey, here's the truth, here's what we're experiencing. Right. And he almost had a total meltdown. We should we'll actually play the clip here as well, just so people can see this.
We do not need that many vaccines that we need. The chickenpox, I think, can be a parent's choice. The rotavirus, the flu shot that still contains mercury.
All you're doing is you're antagonizing a medical community that wants to help these kids. You haven't done the research. You're antagonizing me. You're antagonizing Dr. Sears. Right. Why would you do that? This show is all about my son. Okay, everyone wants to blame someone, right? Yes. This is what we're trying to figure out here is how to help kids. But all you do when you yell at me on my stage, all you do is anger me.
And do you remember that episode?
I do. I wasn't producing that particular episode, but that episode was infamous for the show. It was, and as a producer, it was also a don't ever let this happen again.
Oh, yeah, I
right? Bet. And certainly it made it so that nobody could go near that topic again. You know, it was just sort of the unwritten rule on the show. We're not going to get into this vaccine thing ever again. It didn't look good for Travis Stork, who's a good guy. Like, there's a lot of people, in the medical freedom movement that, have issues because of that show. But a lot of the stories I did, he supported when,
That's great.
When Monsanto, back in 2015, for instance, when the World Health Organization ruled that glyphosate, the chemical compound in Roundup that sprayed over, 80 or 90% of our crops, when the WHO said that's probably carcinogenic to human beings, it's the second highest cancer rating, does cause cancer, and then there's probably carcinogenic to human beings. He's the one that brought it to my attention and says, I think we should look into this.
Good.
And he also knew I was the one, like, if you're going to do a controversial story, if we're going to, talk about Monsanto, Dell would be the guy to sort of produce that.
Well, one of the things I see this in a lot of doctors today. It's this, and more today than maybe 20 years ago. I think so many of them were completely ingrained in the medical system before, and then now because of social media and just general common sense becoming more available, people have started to say, a lot of these doctors, well, I'm going to try and have one foot in this mainstream medicine and one foot in, I am going to recommend some nutrition and some supplements and staying away from glyphosate and those types of things. But there's still such a stronghold on some of these doctors. And how much of this do you think has to do with the influence of the pharmaceutical industry and how those pharmaceutical companies actually impact in their connection to the school systems?
I think it's huge. And it may actually be everything.
Wow.
You know, I mean, if you think about the pharmaceutical industry, it's the most powerful, I would say it's the most powerful industry in the world.
Wow.
It's certainly the most powerful industry in America
Yeah.
for several reasons. It's the #1 biggest lobby in Washington, D.C. It outspends oil and gas 2 to 1. So for every dollar that the oil and gas lobbyists, buy politicians with, or whatever you want to say that money is doing, pharma is spending twice that. And I'll say we fight wars in the Middle East for oil and gas. What are we fighting for with the double the amount of money that pharma is bringing into our government? And then I think if you reflect on COVID and the pandemic, you will see it was clear it wasn't just a lobby here in this country. Every nation in the world bought into a set of half-truths at best that took away the rights of every citizen. I'll say about COVID, that was the first world war that I've ever seen where it's usually one nation against another or one continent against another. When you look at COVID, I feel like that was every government of the world against its own citizens, and it took away our rights.
It was almost like this demonic spirit that was sort of over this entire, over the governmental agencies of the world.
Yeah, it was, and demonic spirit or just this massive control, industrial control of our government, let's say, right? But when you look at it, it's not just the most powerful lobby in Washington, it also owns the television set. If when you look at stats, between 50 and 70% of all advertising on television is coming from the pharmaceutical industry.
Wow.
That means that they own the television. And this is something I always like to make clear to people, because if you don't work in television, you don't know this. But if you work in TV, it's not like working in film. In television, you are making content for that box that's on every wall in every house and almost every room. It's considered a billboard. It's not considered an entertainment square. That square is a billboard in your house. And all we are doing when we're making content is trying to keep your attention on the billboard so that they can sell you stuff. And so everything in ratings, it's all ratings. It's all how many eyeballs stayed 10 minutes into the show, 20 minutes into 30, and the value of your show is how many eyeballs are going to stick on the commercials and how much you can charge those people, giving you, putting the commercials there. Everything's about the commercial. Now, I think we think about it, but you don't really think what that means. So when people ask me, why can't you talk about chemical dyes in Fruit Loops? Why has that not really been in our news? Or lead and arsenic in our baby food? All things that are coming to light now that we have Robert Kennedy Jr. at HHS, and you still have news reticent because they all have corporate sponsors that made those products. And if they come out and do a story about it, they get a call. I mean, this is how this works. Like, we're going to pull our commercial because you are making our company look bad. Well, imagine just count the next time you're watching television, just count how many ads were pharmaceutical ads, how many allergies and plaque psoriasis and lupus and Crohn's disease and gut issues. I mean, we're so sick, which is what you talk about. It's what we all talk about all the time. Why and what are we going to do about it? So you have that part of it too. So they own the government, they own the television set, and then they're inside of all of our regulatory agencies. There's this revolving door that's going on where when you work for the FDA, look at Scott Gottlieb. He's at Pfizer. I mean, they moved from being a government agency that covers all the tracks and problems that, like Pfizer or Sanofi Aventis or, GlaxoSmithKline, and then they walk right out of the job after having said, no, their products are perfectly safe. And even when it comes to vaccines, even mandating them on people, making you take them. And then they leave and get a multi-million-dollar salary job at the very company that they were like protecting their products. And so you have that going on. And then, as you've pointed out, the universities. Who do you think is funding the textbooks? Who do you think is buying the new medical wing on the university system? All of that money is pouring in. And something that I really, you realize was Tony Fauci. Tony Fauci was the financial kingpin of medical research around the world.
Wow.
Moving billions of dollars through NIAID. I mean, that's something like billions, literally just handing it to universities. And what was it for? If that university, like say you have a doctor that's like, I don't think some product on the market's safe. I'm going to do a study and a trial with rats or whatever, or get more money in chimpanzees. And if I really can get a lot of money, I'll do it with children or human beings. And a study goes on like that, and then suddenly what happens is you watch either funding gets pulled from that university, or a lot of times they'll get a new $50 million grant, but you'll watch that study get shut down.
Wow.
And that's how this whole thing has been rigged. There's and Tony Fauci is probably one of the most powerful people we've ever seen in science. So when he says, if you question me, you're questioning the science. If you're questioning him, you're questioning all the science that he allowed to happen, right? And none of it that he shut down, but he was that powerful.
Wow.
And so we've grown up in a culture we don't realize we're there's questions not being asked and problems not being solved and mountains of evidence that don't actually exist. And so when you come up as a doctor through the system, you are really more, I think the easiest way to understand is to really think of it like a religion. You are growing up as a priest in a religion.
Wow.
That you're never going to see the deep teachings that are in the caves where the Pope is at or the cardinals are at. You only get the basic information. Just teach this. This is what it is, and you move on. So, for instance, there's a huge meeting by the WHO in 2019, right before COVID. The entire meeting of over 150 world scientists from around the world met in Geneva, Switzerland. They were all there to figure out how to stop vaccine hesitancy. That people were starting to really question vaccines, and so they had all of these people giving testimony. I did a whole show on it. It's fascinating. They clearly 5 minutes into it forgot that there was cameras rolling and that this was going to be a public event, because the things they said are things they never wanted anyone to know. But one of them was this Heidi Larson's the head of psychology for the WHO. And she said, one of the problems with vaccination is we have a very wobbly front line. Our frontline doctors that are, treating patients, especially pediatricians, they don't know how to answer the questions that are now coming through the door. Mm-hmm. People are asking more and more questions, and our doctors aren't equipped to answer them. And she said, because as we all know, a doctor or a nurse is lucky if they get a half a day of education on vaccines. She said that in the WHO. Nobody screamed, that's ridiculous. They all nodded like, yeah. We think our doctors are being trained that when they're giving our babies vaccines or when they're recommending drugs, that they've read the trials, that they understand how the immune system's working around it. They understand, what's going on and how it interacts with other things. They don't know any of that.
Well, one of the things, I've learned from interviewing so many people is there are so many doctors that don't, again, they've memorized a few facts, and if you ask something below surface level, they really don't know.
They really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's a problem, and it gets to be a real problem because if you really challenge anybody that doesn't know something, especially if they've been sort of held up as an authority, but then you ask them questions that get beyond what they know, the usual response is then they go on the attack and they try to put you down, or as we hear so often now, people are getting kicked out of the pediatrics office and I got fired from my pediatrician's office.
It's crazy. Well, one of the things that's happened is people have just tried to go after someone else's character rather than actually debating or actually discussing the topic. And nobody's been a victim of this more than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Sure. And I don't think a lot of people know what a key player you were in this entire Make America Healthy Again movement, helping Robert F. Kennedy get in the position he was in. I was talking to a friend about this recently. I said, listen, if we would go back 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and you would have told me that RFK Jr. is running the HHS, I would have said, only a God-sized miracle could make that happen, because there's no way that could ever happen.
It is a God-sized miracle. And I just thought that. I was lucky enough to be standing in the Oval Office. I was invited to watch him swear in, and that's all I thought is, wow, God is good. And none of us none of us ever imagined this was possible, which means in some ways, I mean, I was his director of communications, which is what you're referring to when he ran for president. I actually asked him to run for president in the 2020 election, right around 2018. In 2018, I sat him down with a couple of people and I just said, Bobby, you're the statesman of this movement. I think we're about to start getting censored. I think we're making so much headway that they're going to really start shutting this conversation down. And maybe the way to overcome that would be if you get up on that debate stage, I think you're going to pull high enough just through name recognition to really, be a force, and they're going to come after you. They're going to attack you on this issue, which is going to give you, if you think about it, back when like Biden and Kamala Harris and Tulsi Gabbard, when they were all lined up, if Bobby had been standing up there, part of your problem in the early, debates like that is being noticed. Bobby they would have attacked him. I was like, you're going to get so much free airtime because they're going to attack you on this issue because they think they're right. Anyway, I almost had him convinced into doing it. But
the timing worked out perfectly.
It did, because he waited, and 4 years later said, I think I'm ready to do that.
I want to confirm something you said, because I started seeing that in 2018. We were seeing massive growth, and I founded in my name drax.com, and it grew to be the #1 natural health website. I mean, we were up there. I want to say it was 5 or 7 overall. It was like WebMD, Healthline. And then we were at 20 million unique visitors a month. And then in 2018, the end of 2018, something happened.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, our traffic went from 20 million down to 4 million.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what happened? And then I started sort of doing my own research and realizing Google had bought 2 pharmaceutical companies. They invested in GlaxoSmithKline, and they changed the entire algorithm to where if it was natural health based and not pharmaceutically based, they absolutely crushed the traffic and rankings of sites. So it wasn't just my site. It was people like Joe Mercola and Mind Body Green, even DrOz.com, anyone that had anything natural. But my point is I was seeing such a surge at that time, and then 2018, this big thing of censorship came in, and of course continued like crazy throughout COVID.
Well, right. I mean, and what's always a trip. I mean, everything happens for a reason, and no one believes that more than me. I'm not sure I have any self-will. I think I've been in some sort of, predestined journey because it's been so outrageous. But I would love to just have that time capsule, say just what if Bobby had been standing on a stage when, COVID, I mean, even if like coming in near the end there is like, you're coming into that election, COVID was real, this thing's happening, is Trump going to get a vaccine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Bobby had been in the debates when all of that was going on? It would have been fascinating to see how he was, responding to the actual moment in the limelight of having, running for president. But all that being said, you were right. I felt it coming too. There was real censorship. And then by the time, Joe Biden got into office, we saw the destruction of the First Amendment in a way that I don't think we've ever seen it before. And, when it came to, and luckily Bobby called and said, and that was it. COVID really pushed him over the edge.
Yeah.
And, so he called me and said, that idea you had, I'm thinking of doing it now. And so I was in, I think every meeting he had we had 3 or 4 meetings just hashing out, should I do this? Is this crazy? Am I out of my mind?
Yeah.
But he's a really spectacular individual. It was beautiful to get to work with him. I don't think we've ever, I haven't been around politics a lot, but I can't imagine as many people in there that really govern themselves in the type of spiritual way that he does. I would always say in interviews, I wouldn't call him a religious man. I would call him a spiritual man. I think he is deeply, deeply involved with attempting to keep his self-will of what he wants out of the way and just do what is the next right step for humanity, and I think a lot of that comes from his recovery. He's been very outspoken about drug abuse when he was younger. I think, having something that he felt so powerless to, you can see he's governed by what freed him there. And he talks about God, and he has a spiritual life. And so it was really neat. And so he was able to start as a Democrat. And then, it was clear we were being cheated. They were literally rigging the whole system. I forget, was it like New Hampshire, where the Democratic Party passed a rule that if you campaigned in New Hampshire and that if you campaigned at all, any votes you got in the primary from New Hampshire would be given straight to Joe Biden. I mean, it was like crazy. Like, what? So we would already campaign. So what kind of rule is that? Like, you're not allowed to campaign here. If you do, we're taking your delegates. I mean, it was that bad.
It was absolutely crazy. As you've spent time around Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what is maybe the most surprising thing as you started spending a lot of time around him, just about him as a person?
I think it's that a lot. I've seen documentaries they've made about the rise of Robert Kennedy Jr. and his huge ego, and he needs to be in front of cameras. That it's really not the case. And so sort of the inside scoop is, we would work on a speech, and both Charles Eisenstein, who was just a spectacular speechwriter, some of the, and Bobby, I won't say Bobby also is deeply involved. He's not a guy that just reads somebody's script, but would get involved with it. But I'd work on like presentation, and here's where you could really, if you just like put an emphasis in here, you could really get the crowd to cheer, and he just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
He would say to me, Del, I've watched, you're amazing at that, but that's not how I give speeches. I just give the truth the way it is, and if the people are ready to hear it, they'll hear it. And so it took me a while to understand that. And then I started realizing that is a form, getting a crowd to cheer and rise up and, get all pumped up does also have your own sort of ego pumping up that's going on there. And he doesn't have any part of any of it. And so watching how much he sort of keeps that energy inside of himself, like just even keel, so that he can, get through the day. That's the most surprising thing, is just how consistent that is.
I mean, it's amazing because, again, he has been more slandered and ganged up on than anyone I can think of in our modern day. And he has kept such a sort of even-keeled, just his emotions in check, which is really powerful. The thing I respect most about him, and I've spent very little time with him, but in watching his interviews and just seeing the way he's conducted himself. I mean, there's this clip of him talking about how much he cared about kids with autism. If he could just prevent one kid from getting autism, essentially it's something he would give his life for. And it brought me to tears. I was really, really just astounded that because that's just something we're missing in government, is this sense of like, I will sacrifice myself, I will give everything, and I care deeply about people, about children, about the health of this country. And that's something that really moved me to become a supporter of what he's all about.
He's the real deal. I mean, he's not just saying that on a camera. He's like that, 24/7. There was times I would sit down, with him, even before he ran for president. I would just say, why are you still here? I mean, you could have just let go of this topic. You're a Kennedy, right? He was in line to be one of the great political Kennedys. They handed him the Senate seat in New York, and he turned it down and went out and campaigned for Hillary Clinton to be senator then. So a lot of his family's upset about that. That was his moment. You were supposed to get into politics, and he didn't. He didn't want that limelight. But I just said, but then you get into this vaccine issue. You're probably one of the most established, and your achievements in environmental work as a lawyer is bar none. He's one of the greatest environmental attorneys of all times, which should make him a darling of the Democratic Party. But this one issue, you decided to get into one issue that's the third rail of all third rail vaccines. It has dragged you through the mud. It has tarred and feathered you on a constant basis. It has attempted to erase your entire legacy of cleaning up rivers, cleaning up oceans, cleaning up the air. Why don't you just walk away and say, I'm just going to let this one thing go? And he said, because children are being destroyed. And children are dying. And he said, my father raised me to, once you discover there's a people that are being hurt or oppressed in any way, that's who you work for. That's what you're here for. He's like, I'm not designed to walk away. And so that was it. And so he'll take the slings and arrows and attacks, merciless attacks, and keep going because he feels that that's what's important in his life.
Do you have unexplainable illness, hormone dysfunction, weight loss resistance, brain fog, and you're tired of being dismissed when you know something isn't right? Well, get my at-home testing of targeted biomarkers, including hormones, thyroid, and metabolism, plus a full hour with one of my senior health advisors to help you understand your results. The truth is, your doctor's probably reading your blood work all wrong. They're missing the cellular issues behind the symptoms. This new testing flips the script. The future of interpreting test results is here. I'm currently offering a simple at-home blood test that actually tests for the right things, and just as importantly, it comes with proper interpretation of your results. If you want to check it out and grab one before they're gone, just go to mybloodwork.com now.
You know, you've put together some really amazing documentaries. Would you list some of your 2 or 3 your most popular that you've put out there?
You know, really the two biggest ones is I made Vaxxed from Cover Up to Catastrophe, which ignited the medical freedom movement around the world. At least that's what people have said it did.
Yep.
That was very specific.
I've recommended that to so many people.
Yeah,
so many people. Again, if you have not seen Vaxxed, you have to, especially if you're going to be a parent. You are a parent. It's the must watch health documentary.
Yeah, it was really impactful, powerful, important. Changed my life and career forever. That was the moment, you know, I had to let television go because I knew I was going to piss off the pharmaceutical industry. I started a nonprofit out of that called the Informed Consent Action Network because that was just about one vaccine, MMR and autism. I wanted to know about the other, 15 to 16 vaccines given in 72 doses at that point. And, as we were traveling the country with that film, so many people were coming up and wanting to tell their story of their vaccine injury story or their children's vaccine injury story. So we were just recording hundreds and hundreds of, these incredibly painful stories, but it wasn't just MMR and it wasn't just autism.
Yeah.
Every parent, parents were, claiming every single vaccine was being implicated by somebody. Now, anecdotal. For sure,
Yeah.
I mean, does that mean that they, that happened? I don't know, but you started hearing real, consistent, similarities. One of the ones we heard a lot was, my star athlete daughter or my star athlete son was paralyzed after the Gardasil vaccine. I heard that many, many times. Or our baby died after a flu shot, or one of the ones that was interesting because Vax was about MMR and autism. I would say the number one thing I'd hear was we never got to the MMR vaccine. Our child regressed into autism right after the DTaP vaccine. But all of that, parents were coming up after the film and saying, obviously your film's about the MMR. What about the rest of the vaccines? And so I wanted to do a deeper dive, and that's why I started the nonprofit that I did. I started a weekly talk show called The Highwire, which you brought up, thehighwire.com. And that, I would say, that's like a documentary every single week. I mean, it's usually 90 minutes to 2.5 hours of interviews, breaking news, science, and we have a strong, powerful legal team. Half of our funding goes to suing mostly government agencies. We've won against FDA, CDC, NIH, Health and Human Services. So all of that is a part of what we do. I was a part of Vax 2, which was really about the interviews that happened on the bus as we were traveling the country. I didn't produce that, but I was on the bus when we were doing those interviews. That was a very powerful film. There's been a few I wasn't involved with, but the current one I would say is my next major film, and that's An Inconvenient Study.
Yeah.
Which is
what was your biggest finding, like sort of thing that you kind of shocked you as you were doing this the documentary you're doing now?
Well, it was shocking that what this study discovered was as bad as it was. What was shocking were the actual numbers. This was a study that compared vaccinated children to completely unvaccinated. This study was done because I challenged a world-renowned scientist, a guy named Dr. Marcus Zervos, who is the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health. Not someone I normally get to interact with, right? Not someone that would ever consider themselves to be on our side. In fact, is adamantly not on the side of questioning vaccines at all. But it was almost like a bet. If you're right, then certainly this simple study compare vaccinated, completely unvaccinated children, and I said, let the chips fall where they may. And he kind of said, deal. and decided to do it, which I was shocked at. You know, no major institution's ever done this study, which is weird too. I mean, I find that odd that it'd be the easiest way to prove the vaccines work. Let's just compare these two groups of kids. But the numbers of what came out in this study, you know there's an issue, but you're assuming, right? A bad issue would be if there's a 60% increase of, let's say, autoimmune disease amongst, you know, one group of kids versus another. No one would want a 60% increase, certainly not a 100% increase where you have, you know, you have twice the rate, you know, of an issue. This study found, and it was a big study of 18,500 kids, 2,000 of which are unvaccinated, which is, even if you think about the national average is probably under 10% of a population is unvaccinated.
Yeah.
In this case, if you're getting 2,000 out of 18,000, it's more than 20% of the kids, which was a very large unvaccinated group, which is cool. Great. We can really get some strong numbers here. But the conclusion of the study by a guy that only did the study to prove us wrong, to prove that the vaccinated were healthier, at least that's my opinion.
Yeah.
It's the only reason I could imagine he was doing it based on the conversations we were having. But it found that the conclusion was the children who were vaccinated were 2.5 times more likely to have a chronic disease. And then there were categories that were really scary, 6 times the rate of neurodevelopmental disorders amongst vaccinated compared to unvaccinated, nearly 6 times the rate of autoimmune disease. And then there was a lot of categories where they couldn't even figure out the rate because there was 0 in the unvaccinated group, that was a weird problem. I'm not a math guy necessarily. And so they just blocked the line out. Like, you don't even get a comparison ratio. You cannot make math out of 0. So they just leave it like undocumented. For instance, like ADHD, I believe it was, had like 250 ADHD children in the vaccinated and 0 in the unvaccinated. So they just leave it a wash. Like, we couldn't determine if there was an issue. Couldn't determine there was definitely an issue. But you needed a 1 at least in the unvaccinated group to be able to do the math. And so they just go, well, couldn't figure that out. So anyway, it's I think the magnitude of the problem or the difference, that was shocking to me. I didn't expect to see numbers like that.
And that's amazing. And what that documentary called?
An Inconvenient Study.
An Inconvenient Study.
It's out right now. Anyone can watch it for free at aninconvenientstudy.com.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things as we've talked about, you've been a big part of is this sort of bringing to light medical freedoms. You know, I know when I've had my full-time practice and I've got a clinic opening here in Nashville in January, but, you know, I would always have parents come to me and say, well, my school is requiring my kids to get, you know, to get a shot and so we would have them fill out a religious exemption form and that worked in the state of Tennessee where my functional medicine practice was. And that would tend to work. Well, you know, now there's all of these different state laws and the fact that you can't even have religious freedoms in some states from that. What is something that people need to be aware of as we've gone through COVID, as we look at a lot of these different things going on? What are some things that people need to be aware of in order to keep their medical freedom?
Well, first of all, the only freedoms you keep are the ones you fight for. And that's been stated by, you know, presidents throughout time and by our founding fathers. So if you think that the rights are just going to stay there, I think we all woke up to that during COVID. I think we all recognized how little medical freedom we had left, that a government could forcibly inject adults with a product that was not properly safety tested in order to go to work, in order to get on a plane, forced to wear masks, forced to like shut down many of our businesses, lock us in our homes, shut down our schools, shut down our churches. I mean, it was really pretty incredible. And, you know, we're in a time right now where I'm sure a lot of your audience and even mine are tired of talking about COVID. But, you know, then why have history books? Then why talk about, you know, how this country was founded? Why talk about the revolution? Why talk about what makes us who we are? I mean, these are the moments that define who we are. And in our lifetime, we watched the system fail us. We watched our Constitution all but completely buckle. I mean, I will say we did better than almost anyone else in the world. As bad as it was here.
I mean, New Zealand is also in these other countries even worse.
I was just
terrible.
talking to Senator Antic in Australia yesterday. I was on his podcast. I mean, we were watching innocent people getting tackled by giant police officers in riot gear for walking their dog without a mask on. You know what I mean? It was crazy.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to this because, vaccines is a very controversial topic, but it shouldn't be. We shouldn't, be afraid of having a conversation in the United States of America because it goes into so many other issues. And I want to be clear about Robert Kennedy Jr. and the government that we now have as a result of COVID. Without COVID, I will say this, Robert Kennedy Jr. is not HHS Secretary for 50 more years.
Yep.
At least.
Agreed.
No matter how much work we were doing towards medical freedom, that did wake up enough people to say, hold on a second, what's going on here? But if you'll notice, all of mainstream media that was censoring him was screaming, he's going to take your vaccines away. All of this, he's going to, just end, polio's coming back, smallpox is coming back. None of that's happened.
Yeah.
None of that's happened. And now reporters are like, are you disappointed with Robert Kennedy Jr.'s doing? I said, no, I told you this was how he was going to do it. I told you he's not here to take vaccines away. He's here to, see, are we taking too many at one time? Are they as safe as they could possibly be?
Yeah.
Should we be allowed to be a part of the process? These are the types of things. And by the way, right around the corner, if you think it's okay to mandate medical products, which goes against the Nuremberg Code, something that was designed after we tried, 16 doctors from Nazi Germany, and all of them, I believe, were hung after those trials. Every free nation came together and said, what have we learned here? And they said, well, let's put it all into a document for all of modern medicine to adhere to, and that's the Nuremberg Code. And the very first rule, number 1, is called informed consent. That's why I named my nonprofit the Informed Consent Action Network. And it basically states that the voluntary, commitment by the patient is critical in all decisions.
Yeah, of course.
That they must be told all the benefits and all the potential side effects of whatever procedure or drug or vaccine or whatever medical thing that you want to do. And no use of force or coercion is allowed. Well, when a parent comes to you and says, my kid can't go to school if they don't get a blah, 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 a vaccine or whatever, that's coercion. That is opposed to the Nuremberg Code, which wasn't just for America. That was the code for all of medicine in all free nations.
Yeah.
Everywhere that you can't opt out of a vaccine, they are breaking with the Nuremberg Code. I think we should ask ourselves questions about that because right around the corner, we're about to see, I think you're going to see it in some of the really powerful liberal states. You've got Pritzker, was that his name? Governor Pritzker? Anyway, he's starting to do psychoanalysis inside of schools on all of your children. Imagine if on the back of that they decide your child needs an antidepressant and SSRI. Would you want to live in a world where the government can force your kid to take an SSRI, can force your kid to be on Ritalin or something? Because remember, that's what that pharmaceutical lobby is doing.
Yeah.
It is saying that the only way for your children to be healthy, we need to be more involved in your children's lives. We're now the most drugged nation in the world, and we're the sickest nation in the industrialized world.
Isn't it wild when you look at the stats? And it's continued to get worse. I think it's number 70 right now. It's so bad in terms of overall quality of life.
If you took malnutrition out of the equation, we would be the sickest nation in the world, right? If you took places where they just have no food because they have other issues, we are the sickest nation there is.
And we take double the pharmaceuticals at least.
At least. And so, the thing about medical freedom is we should all want it.
Yeah.
Just like, if I'm going to buy a car and I see the crash test rating, I want to know that crash test was handled by someone that hates the company of the car I just bought.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want a Tesla fan that has grew up with Tesla posters all over their house and, tattooed Tesla on their arm. I don't want them doing the crash test on Tesla.
Yeah.
I want Ford. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes,
I want your opponent doing that. And then when it says 5-star rating, we hated this car, but we can't help but admit it's really safe. That's what should be happening with every product. That's what should be happening with vaccines. Vaccines should be being tested by guys like me and Robert Kennedy Jr.
That's
and those,
right.
With scientists, of course, but challenging it in the hardest way possible.
Yeah.
And then if they prove to be safe under the rigors of that type of testing, then you go, wow, these things really are safe. But when you watch COVID, what happened there, you had an FDA and a CDC literally almost like with pom-poms before the vaccine's even in its phase 3 trials. We are going to get this to you as quickly as possible. How do you know this thing should ever go into human beings? How did they already make that assumption?
Let me ask you, I think most people realize this. Pharmaceutical companies, as you mentioned, it's the most powerful industry operating in the Western world. And who is it that's benefiting the most? Obviously, you've got the CEOs and some of those people, I guess, are stakeholders, but who are the groups that are kind of pulling the strings even behind these pharmaceutical companies?
I mean, I would say this. It's not just greed. It's not just people making big money, but it's sort of like a housing market. If you're selling while the products are going well, there's all the salespeople have great livings. A lot of people I've run into have grown a conscience. Like I used to be a salesperson for Pfizer. Usually they're very beautiful women, tends to be, what they like to hire that go in and sell these drugs to doctors. But the truth is that there is a belief system around it, right? That it's making us healthy, it's making us better. And I do think the governments of the world are deeply entrenched in some of the things they want from it, especially in a world where we're concerned about biological warfare. Vaccines are going to be the tool you would want to have available to you. And if you come out too hard against vaccines or you destroy that industry, they'll have no ability to ramp up a product to save us should we get attacked by a terrorist that releases smallpox on the subway. At least this is the mentality. So I want to say it's not just greed, and it's not, there's a lot of players and there is some decent reasoning behind it. It's one of the things that's happening right now. People are like, why has Donald Trump got Albert Bourla in the White House and Bobby's standing there? They're literally like teaming up with the guy that gave us this vaccine. And I get asked that question all the time, but I'd say, because do you want your drugs made only in China? Do you want Pfizer to move all operations out of America so that we don't even know how they're being made? And frankly, we don't even get to be a part of the safety testing, whatever safety testing's done. Our government it's not an easy place to work, right? There's two functions that have to happen. We want industry to thrive in America. We want to be the melting pot of the world. We also are, we want to remain as one of the richest nations in the world so that when we stand for freedom, we have a power to mean something. And so, you have a real, double-edged sword there that they have to deal with.
Well, it's so tough. I'll share this for myself. I understand the importance of emergency medicine.
Yeah.
And we've got an amazing system for that. I mean, I personally believe we could just completely, and I mean this, 100% get rid of the chronic care industry of prescribing statin drugs, ADHD drugs, all of those things, 0 of them, and we would be radically healthier.
Agreed.
But I know that the problem is that they're kind of lumped in together to a degree. And it makes it hard, because there's been a few times where I saw, because I saw Bill Gates in the White House sitting there next, with Robert F. Kennedy and Trump, and thinking, what is he trying to worm in his way and do right now? I'm so sick of this guy. Can we just completely get him out of the fold? But
he brings a lot of jobs in a lot of things that these guys do. Silicon Valley. I mean, think about it. They didn't stop making these vaccine passports for our phones. Surveillance is the future of all finance in technologies. AI, for as much as it's going to help us, is going to surveil us. It's going to track us, all of it. And there's just billions of dollars pouring into it. So whether, and when you watch Donald Trump, this is where, I'm not saying he's perfect. He makes me nervous because he's so engaged with we got to be prosperous. We got to beat everyone with AI. We got to have the fastest, bestest AI there is. What if AI is the end of the world, dude? What if the AI is the end of freedom as we know it? Is there any part of your thinking that's looking at it that way, you know?
Well, and this is why, for myself, I really try and be, I am a big believer in holistic medicine. I think that Trump is doing some great things. Robert F. Kennedy is doing some great things. But for me, I'm trying to live as in alignment with the Bible as possible. Yeah. And, when I think about the spirit that's sort of over the United States of what most people worship, it's economic progression and materialism. Yes. And so if that's still your God, even though it might be moving us away from, sexualization and some other immoral things that maybe are worse, it's still not the God that you want to be following.
I think it's a really good way to put it. And I think a lot of our issues are that we're becoming an atheistic nation.
Yeah.
I think we're really struggling right now. We're having massive moral and ethical battles, really. I mean, these lines are being drawn on issues that, we're having trouble with. But yeah, I am the same way. I say I'm politically marooned. I obviously ran with Robert Kennedy Jr., but I ran with him as a Democrat. Then we changed and we started running as an independent. I saw problems with all of it. The whole thing is rigged. I can tell you one of the most important speeches anyone could ever watch is just go watch the entire speech that Robert Kennedy Jr. gave the day he stepped down from running for president and said, I'm going to join President Trump. I was there for the whole month. While you've never seen, it was rough on him. I will tell you, his health, the night before I even went in, Bobby looked like crap. I was like, man, he was struggling with that decision.
Yeah.
Even though there was so much of it that seemed like the right thing to do. If you really want to save kids, Donald Trump was offering him the opportunity. We didn't know if Trump would follow through. Bobby does not agree with President Trump on all the issues in the world, and Trump vice versa. But Trump said to him, let's put those things aside. The thing you really are the best at, this thing with children, I want to do that too.
Yeah.
Get in here and let's do it. So, politically, what are politics? It's just trying to get people in. I was just saying as I was driving over here with my brother, you wish people knew these people. Like Dr. Oz, like you said, you brought him up, a really good guy.
He's a really good guy.
He's a really good guy who, you don't do a show like he did. He's loving, he's compassionate, he's empathetic, he's super smart.
Yep.
He's advanced the technologies of heart surgery.
Yeah.
People don't know that. They think he's a television guy. This guy's one of the greatest heart surgeons in the world, right? Saves people's lives. And then I'll be in an interview and they're like, Dr. Oz is taking away Medicare from innocent people. I was like, look, I'm not a master at Medicare. I'm not. I don't understand exactly how the whole system works, but I will tell you, of all the people I've ever known to be running that department, there can't be anyone more compassionate towards human beings, human suffering, the right to needing food and SNAP programs. This guy is a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
All right. And so, are we not going to trim the fat? Are we not overspending? Are we not have people abusing the system? Come on with the headlines. People are losing their Medicaid. I just don't. And I know Bobby the same way. Bobby's not going to take your vaccines away. He's going to make sure that those of you that want them, that they're the safest that they've ever been. He's also, look at what he's done. He's taking petroleum dyes out of, our children's food.
Yeah.
He's taking lead and arsenic out of baby food. He's going to test it. We're going to be involved with that. These are things you and I and people like us have been reporting for decades.
Oh, yeah.
Decades we've known we've had these issues, And then you look at, he's putting together a commission to study of scientists from all sides to look at vaccines. He's got an advisory committee on immunization practices that has already approved some vaccines. So he didn't stack the deck with his own side, right? He's bringing people from all sides. There's real debates happening. There's real things happening. But, and ultimately, look at like SNAP. Can you believe that they pass basically, I guess, a rule of law, I don't know exactly, but SNAP program, you can't buy soda anymore. You're not going to, if we're going to give you funding to feed your family, you're not going to buy junk food. I think it's going to get more serious. I think in the new health guidelines that is coming out in December, Bobby is starting to telegraph that they're going to go after ultra-processed food. I'm not sure that ultra-processed foods are going to be allowed in our children's school lunches, and certainly probably
Amazing.
Not. Or percentage of reducing it in SNAP programs. How is this a bad thing? When I see he's taking freedom away from people using SNAP, I'm like, the freedom to poison themselves? And aren't we trying to give people nutrition and health benefits so that they can get back to work, so that they can have a life that
That's right.
and be a part of the American dream, So, it's been interesting to get as close to it as we have. We've never seen a moment like this. It's truly spectacular to have, Dr. Marty McCary. I mean, they're looking at holistic health. I mean, it's in the equation. They're not anti-drug.
Yeah.
They're still passing drugs. No one's, lost on them. But to your point, I completely agree. Western medicine or allopathic medicine really is military medicine. It's triage. It's designed to get you back onto the field. Strap your leg back in, you know what I mean?
That's right.
Put you back together and put you back on the field. Get you up and running again. It's great at that. There's no greater ER doctors in the world than here in America. If you're in a car accident, by the way, you're going to be really happy we didn't kick Alex Burla and Pfizer out of the country. You're going to want whatever drugs they need to get you through that horrific experience, through that surgery. It has its place. But when it comes to making us healthy or maintaining health, pharma is the worst there is. You cannot convince me that there's a single drug. We weren't born drug deficient.
That's right.
We just simply weren't. And we have a system that has taken control of all health that never actually studies health, never studies nutrition. These are things that I know you cover crazy.
But to your point, this is such an important thing, is that think about this in mainstream medicine. If you would go to your financial advisor and he's only studied poverty, and he's never studied Warren Buffett or anything in terms of how you build wealth.
Right.
And you just went to somebody who studied poverty, and you're like, hey, here's all my money. I want you to invest and make money. He's probably going to lose the money. Here's going to lose the money, and you're not going to see these great returns. If you want to have better health, you need to go and invest your own health with somebody who has studied health.
Yes.
But that's not. But doctors get really zero. I mean, again, the fact of this is doctors today get zero nutrition classes. They get really zero health classes. They only get sick and disease classes.
Yeah.
And I know actually that's something I saw RFK come out and say, we are going to mandate in the future that all medical doctors and osteopaths have nutrition courses in their curriculum.
Yeah. And by the way, I would imagine every doctor and
would
love that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, sure. Why? I mean, I do feel undereducated on these issues. And so there's a renaissance happening right now. If we can keep pharma, out of the room.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, keep making your drugs. Well, you're going to keep getting billions of dollars. You're going to do just fine.
Yeah.
But stay out of the room of health. You've really messed this up. Every drug, we're more like every SSRI. How many S's did I put in there?
It's SSRI.
SSRIs we put in there. We're only getting more depressed. It's not working. And then how many studies, by the way, Josh, how many studies need to show that, serotonin and melatonin and all the things that these SSRIs are supposed to be a part of aren't even working the way we think they did or are a part of this process the way we think it is. And it's all happening actually in our stomach and not in our brain. I mean, I'm reading all these headlines going, then why is this still the most prescribed drug in the world? It should be over by now. This is the wrong approach.
Isn't it crazy? It's crazy. I mean, it should be overnight. Like, whoa, these studies are conclusive.
Yeah.
The antidepressant should go away tomorrow.
Immediately.
And they're still,
Yeah.
Hey, if you want practical science-backed guidance for living a healthier, longer, more vibrant life, you need to check out the Biohack It podcast. It is hosted by my good friend Aman Hassan, and it brings a thoughtful, compassionate perspective to wellness that so many women have been looking for. Every week, Aman breaks down the latest research in longevity, hormones, and metabolic health in a way that's clear and easy to understand, leads to important conversations around women's health, fertility, and the steps women can take to protect their energy, balance their hormones, and support long-term well-being. She talks with top doctors, scientists, and health experts about natural healing, nutrition, lifestyle choices that make a real difference, and sits down with entrepreneurs and thought leaders to explore how they stay strong, grounded, and resilient in their personal lives and their work. If you want a show that speaks directly to health challenges women are navigating today while offering hope, clarity, and real solutions. Tune into Biohack It every Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts. It is one of the most educational and uplifting shows in the wellness space, and I think you're going to love it.
And so that's where, when I look at all of this, I always look at things from the point of media. It's why I really love what I do. Politics is only going to get this so far. And leaders will only be able to get as much done as the people will permit. We still are a nation of, for, and by the people. And it's why when I see people that know what's right, when they know how to be healthy with their own lives, they know where to get the exemption for their own children. They know what states they want to live in, all of that, but they're not really helping their neighbor. And they're just saying, hey, I don't want to get into it. If you don't get into it, then we remain as a minority, and then we are conquerable, and our truth and our values can be destroyed and removed from this earth. I do think that's what the pandemic was about.
Yeah.
It tried to close it out. It overreached, thank God. It played its hand way too hard. It revealed its lack of science in a major way, which I'm capitalizing on. But it's our work as citizens, our work as people, our work talking to each other that changes this world. Bobby's only going to get so much done.
Yeah.
Marty and great guys, but they're in a cesspool up there, and they've got tens of thousands of employees. They're probably fighting them at every turn. People get him, Callie Means just came out and said that there's a CIA document being passed around to all of Bobby's employees to undermine him. What do you think? I'm like, well, that's the government. It's the CIA. It's corrupt. Is that a shock? I'll tell you who's not shocked by that. Robert Kennedy Jr.
Exactly.
He is like, oh, forget it then. I'm not doing this job. He knew what he was up against, but we moved the needle more than anything.
Man, it's been crazy to me because we have, I got a friend of mine, Dr. Will Cole, he just did this panel with somebody, and there's this nutritionist and a few other MDs that that I think they're getting paid by some of these pharmaceutical companies and agricultural companies, and they're like criticizing Bobby for being unscientific, for moving the chemically petroleum-based food dyes out of the cereal. And you're like, really? Like the Biden administration did nothing, and then he's making all of these positive changes moving forward in the future.
Yeah.
And anyways, but I am now I'm thrilled where we're at. I'm thrilled with the growth we've seen in terms of just the natural health movement. And when I opened my practice in 2007, about 18 years ago, I remember having people raise their hand. How many of you have heard of an omega-3 fatty acid? Almost nobody. So now, we've just continued to see more and more people become educated and aware.
Yeah.
And so we're moving in the right direction.
Well, I think you have to be aware and cautious of what I've already stated, which is your news anchors are never going to tell you the truth. As long as you're counting pharmaceutical ads, that's who's giving you your information. Just know that.
Yeah.
Just know that until you see Josh Axe commercials and Bigtree commercials or whatever we're working on, or holistic health commercials, and those become the majority, then you can say, oh my God, the world's changed. I can trust, or at least I know that that's now the bias. The bias is going to be pharma. It's going to continue to be pharma. I want to point out that as bad as the pandemic was, we still haven't really seen any mainstream health experts apologize for the mistakes that were made.
That's right.
You know what I mean? There's been no apology for social distancing, which Tony Fauci said in front of the Congress was just made up, had no basis in science. There's no science in locking us down from a virus. Australia locked itself down. It was an island. It was an island. It was the best experiment you could possibly have that didn't have COVID yet. They didn't let anyone in, didn't let anyone out. And in the end, they had to open their doors at some point, or they would have just shriveled up and died, because they need commerce, they need a life. What happened? Just as many people, if not more, died in Australia, and they were already vaccinated. So you want to talk about an experiment? Australia was the experiment.
Yeah.
We locked it down. No one got here, didn't have the virus, vaccinated everybody, and we still died at the same rate. So the whole thing is an absolute disaster. And then you look at remdesivir and the ventilators that killed 9 out of 10 people, living through how many people died in hospitals where their loved ones couldn't stand by their side. There's a reckoning that needs to happen that has not happened.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I think we could die waiting for it. I really think the work that needs to be done now is as we've said, the ER is there if you've messed up. If you need an organ transplant, I'd ask yourself right now, why don't you clean up your life right now? Don't get yourself to the point where you need an organ transplant. When people say they're going to make me vaccinate in order to get the organ transplant, I was like, well, I mean, when in Rome, this is how this system works. If you're having to pull things out of your body, whatever's going on has gone too far. We need to build a world where Josh Axe and people like you are actually who we're involved with the moment our baby is born in this earth, not to a pediatrician that doesn't know anything about this, the 10 vaccines they're going to give you at one time. You should be seeing a chiropractor. You should be seeing an acupuncturist. You should be seeing a homeopath, if anything at all. You should be definitely engaged in your own nutrition. And that's what I'm focused on. I really want to build a healthcare system. That's what I'm working with a bunch of people right now, a place where you can learn about all the modalities that aren't going to give you a drug, and find what's right for you, a place where you can get into fitness and you can get into nutrition. Where do we find it? And then what is that system? Can we build a system of our own big enough where eventually we do our own licensing? Pharma's not licensing for us. Why would pharma be up on the board of licensing for a chiropractor? How does that make any sense whatsoever? So there's things there that I think we need to change. I think we should be taking this opportunity not to invest in our government and and wait for Bobby to make a healthcare system that heals us. We've got to build it now. We have a pause button right now where we're not being censored. We're not being shut down. Right now, we have a government that's open to holistic health. That doesn't mean we go ahead and tie ourselves to the Medicaid system and the Medicare system and how do I get reimbursed by it? No way. That is always going to be the Death Star. It has to. It thinks about too many people at one time. Pharma's too involved, will be involved. We need to build that new system together. We need to start building communities of health. We've got to start getting engaged with, a woman when she's, pregnant. How are you dealing with your prenatal situation? How are you going to give birth? What does that natural birth look like? How do we get these children started on the right path? Because every chiropractor in the world, look at their kids, right? We should be running saying, I want my kids to look like every chiropractor's kids look like.
This is one thing I've brought up pretty frequently is when I think about the group of people that's been the most outspoken against people against all the lockdowns during COVID, all those things. It's been chiropractors, followed by naturopaths, functional medicine doctors that have really been the most outspoken, and they're also the healthiest group of people.
They are.
It's like, do you want to listen to whoever the former HHS person was, or Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's 70 doing push-ups and looks like he could be
doing pull-ups? I mean, he's doing like 50 pull-ups.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. So I'm absolutely with you, and I think we've got there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up. I want to let people. I want you to remind people where they could find you. The High Wire, also your new documentary.
So thehighwire.com. Every Thursday, I do a live show. I think this upcoming Thursday next week, I've got Russell Brand, which is going to be a blast. But we cover all of the cutting edge, understanding drugs that are being recalled, things that are on the chopping block, the latest studies, safety trials, all of it. It's sort of like The Doctors, which I worked on, only telling you the complete and total truth. Nothing but the truth. And then an inconvenientstudy.com. This film is a tool that it's just, even if you think you know it, this film really came out beautifully. It is laying it out so clearly, and all of the reviews we're getting are just from people saying, I finally found something I handed to my friend that just wasn't listening, didn't quite, or a family member that was, not really asking about vaccines or was just starting, but I couldn't get through to them. This film is really helping people understand the issue. And this is in a nutshell, the question we should be all be asking that the film asks. Why is it that not a single regulatory agency anywhere in the world, not a single government, not the best governments, even America, not a major medical institution like Kaiser Permanente, or until this moment, Henry Ford Health just did it, but why have none of them ever been able to do a study that compares the vaccinated to the unvaccinated and show us that the vaccinated are actually healthier? Wasn't that the whole point of this program? Wasn't to make our kids healthier? And if you can't produce a study that shows that they are, we have a problem.
Yeah.
And so the study at the center of this unpublished study, let me say that, I've been sent a cease and desist letter by Henry Ford Health for, I don't want to misrepresent, they didn't publish it. That's what this is about. I wore hidden cameras to go and have dinner with Dr. Zervos to ask him why he wasn't publishing it. It's a big part of the film. It's super interesting to see, the conversation and the battle going on inside of him. It's really fascinating.
Wow.
But ultimately, we should want evidence. This is all I want. What I want is people to be skeptical enough to stop taking experts' opinions on things. Well, the experts say that Robert Kennedy Jr. is wrong. They have done placebo-based trials. That's not an answer any longer. You're too smart for that. We're too smart for that. We did this during COVID. We need to say, where's the evidence that this is going to stop transmission? Because you lied. You said it was 95% effective. It was 0% effective.
Yeah,
everybody
right.
that got the vaccine got sick. Okay? So we know they lie. So experts shouldn't matter. Tony Fauci was an expert. That shouldn't matter anymore. What we want is on the front page of the New York Times, every placebo-based trial that's ever been done on a childhood vaccine. They'll never print it because they don't exist. It's never been done. They're not safety testing these products. And then that should bother people. How is that? I know it's like your cathedral is falling down, right? But we need to demand evidence now for every statement made.
Yeah.
You don't just get to say, that's not true, Robert Kennedy Jr. is wrong. Show me your evidence then. And I say this to every news reporter. I said, when are you going to hand me the placebo-based trials? When are you going to hand me some evidence? Because on our side, we are doing nothing but handing you peer-reviewed science, page upon page upon page. We are now controlling this conversation. We're in a beautiful position. The world is waking up. America especially is waking up. We have great leadership right now. We need to make as much hay as we can right now.
Yeah.
We need to make the world a better place. We need to make America strong again. We can never get to a place where we can be forcibly injected by our government, or we are no longer free. We have the same rights as farm animals, and I mean that.
Yeah.
Every American, no matter what you believe about the vaccine program, should believe that you should always have a choice.
Yeah.
If we lose the right to choose, then we lose this dream, and anything is possible. If your government can force something on your body, anything, any atrocity is now possible. We need to take that out of their arsenal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this medical freedom is so critical. And Del, I'm just so grateful for you being on the front lines of exposing the truth, of being a big part of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being where he's at today. And thanks so much. I want to encourage everybody to check out all the amazing thing Del here is up to. The High Wire, you can check out his show there. An Inconvenient Truth, his amazing documentary. Vaxxed, his prior documentary. I want to say thanks everybody for tuning in here to the Dr. Josh Ack Show. Remember, each and every week we're diving deep into the science and principles of how you can heal physically, mentally, spiritually, and take your health and your life to the next level. Also, don't forget to subscribe. And by the way, this episode absolutely will likely be shadow banned on YouTube. And the only way that you can make sure that you see every episode that we cover in the future, where we're bringing on incredible guests here like Del, is to subscribe, because it then will show up on your feed. It's also the number one thing you could do to support the show here. Also, thanks everybody who's commenting, who's part of the community, and for sharing this. There are millions of people that have had their health freedoms taken away, or that are being blocked, and they don't know the truth, and they don't know that there's options. And so sharing this does a great thing for also just getting the word out there. So thanks so much for doing that. Thanks everybody for taking part of this. Thanks to Del Bigtree for being part of the show today. We'll see you on the next episode.